In this demonstration, we'll put together the theory on data sources and data sets to produce this beautiful report for AdventureWorks being the salesperson directory. Okay, the starting point is the report template, but very carefully, I'm going to immediately do a file and save as because I don't want to corrupt that template. It'll be useful for other reports later on. So I'm just going to go ahead and store this on my computer in a location that I will remember for later. My solution is a great place. The name of the report is the salesperson directory. I'll remind you that in our title text box, it will return the report name. So that name should be friendly. Don't be afraid of embedded spaces and full names. Whatever you want to see is the title of your report. And what users will find when they're browsing workspaces and apps in Power BI is what you should name the report file. Now, when creating a report, there's a series of steps that we work through. We create the report, in this case, from a template. We provide a friendly report name. We then add data sources and define data sets to retrieve data, and if necessary, apply report parameters, which we won't do yet because we're yet to talk about them. That will come in the next module. We then go ahead and lay out the report data by using report items. Okay, now we haven't really introduced it yet, but what we want to do in this demo is give you a true end-to-end, starting with the template, retrieving data, laying it out, and then publishing it to the report server. All right, so we'll begin by defining the data source. So here in the left, in the report data pane, it's simply a matter of right-clicking the data sources folder, and you've got that decision. Are we connecting to a Power BI data set, or is it some other data source? In this example, it's actually an Azure SQL database. So I'll choose the data source, and then I'll provide a friendly name for the data source, the AdventureWorks DW 2020. I then choose the Microsoft Azure SQL database connection type, and then I build up that connection string. I enter the SQL Server authentication, read-only user, and the password. And then select the database. Testing it, thumbs up, we're good to proceed. And then by clicking OK, notice the addition of the data source in the report data pane. To create the data set, you can do this in two ways. You could right-click the dataset folder, but my recommendation for you would be to right-click the data source. And in doing so, it creates a data set based on that data source, and it just saves you one configuration. Like a data source, the data set has a unique name. My style is to always prefix it with DS for data set. And I often find that a report has a main data set that drives the data for the report. So I'll choose to name the data set DS main. Now, when it comes to building up the query, we could enter into the query box some select statement, or we could copy it from our favorite tool.
True.
But what we're going to do is return to the query designer. And in the query designer, which we saw earlier in the wizard, it expresses to us all of the objects in the database here in the database view. So what I'm going to do is expand the dim employee table. By the way, dim means dimension.
I knew that.
Yes, just wanted to make sure. I mean, someone might say, where is the smart employee table? All right, so there are 6 fields that I'll need. The first name, the last name, the title, their email address, their phone number, and interestingly enough, here at the AdventureWorks company, there's a binary set of data here of a JPEG image of the employee's photograph. Now, I need some data from a related table also, so scrolling down my list of tables, there's the dim sales territory. And I would like the sales territory region and the sales territory group. So notice as I'm checking these columns, we see that the fields pane is being built up here. All right, so I've introduced fields from 2 different tables. And so what I now do is expand here to reveal the relationships that had been auto-detected. In fact, we see that an inner join has been created between the dim sales territory and dim employee, happened automatically simply because a foreign key constraint resides in the database. Now, if it didn't, you'd have to come here and potentially add it manually. All right, let me collapse that. It's taking up unnecessary space. There's one filter that I will add. So I add a filter expression by using this filter icon here for applied filters. Because there are many employees and we're only focusing on salespeople, there is in fact a flag called the salesperson flag. And so I'm going to set it using the is operator that it must be true. To test this, up on the toolbar, I click Run Query. And then we should see all of the salespeople and their name, title, address, phone number being retrieved. Now, when I click OK, the select statement that was just created is then copied into the query box here. So let's just point out that we've seen the fields that were selected across two tables. We see a from clause doing an inner join between two tables, and a where clause with a predicate here to filter by salesperson flag is true. Now, when I navigate here on the left of the dataset properties window to the fields page, we see that each field is listed here. We could choose to rename at this level. It might be a time to clean up, make them more friendly for the purpose of your report design. But we've got the ability also to create a calculated field. So I click on the Add button, and then I create a calculated field, and I start by giving it a name like salesperson. And then I can launch the expression editor to create an expression for this calculated field. So I position my cursor to the right of the equal symbol in the box, and then I come to the fields, of which I don't have any. All right. So I think my mistake here, if I've made a mistake, is that I'm not ready to create this calculated field yet. Am I not? I think I need to click OK to create the dataset.
I think so.
Okay, so this is how you delete a calculated field that you're not ready to create. When I click OK, let's take a look in the report data pane to see that the DS dataset's been created and it reveals the fields. Now, when I right-click and edit that dataset to open its properties, there was my problem. When I created the calculated field, the fields collection hadn't really been created yet.
That's right.
So returning to create the calculated field, it's the salesperson, and now the expression builder will let me access those fields. Positioning the cursor to the right of the equal symbol, double-click first name, and then I append the ampersand, which is the concatenation operator, to the literal text of a space, to another concatenation operator, and then double-click last name. All right, or we could be fancier. How about we convert the last name to uppercase? How could I do this? Under common functions, under text, you'll see that we've got a uCase function. The description tells me that this returns a string or character containing the specified string converted to uppercase. So to make this a little more interesting, I'm going to use the uCase function and then concatenate a comma space and then bring in the first name.
Peter, if I wanted to, could I choose any letter in the name to have it converted? Like say an expression like always if the letter A shows up.
That logic could be possible, yes.
Yeah, I think the point I was trying to make there is that you have unlimited flexibility.
I was about to ask why, Chris, you need to do that. But yes, so you've got, if we just take a look at the text functions, you'll find that you've got functions that will let you search for a particular, like inString would probably do this. Mm-hmm. It would tell you where it is. And then you could achieve that. Now, that would be a good example of perhaps writing a code block in the report. You could achieve it as an inline expression, but you'd probably find it's easier to use variables and break out the design. So the answer is yes. How you would do it is directly in the expression window or maybe through the code block. All right, so we now have a new field available in the dataset. And by the way, the report renderer doesn't really mind if it's come directly from your data source or it's a calculation with an expression. You can do the same thing with that field, whether it's presenting it, sorting it, grouping it. All right, I think we're now ready to lay out this data. Mm-hmm. So that covers off on the theory of the module so far, creating the data source, creating the data set. We just wanted to give you an end-to-end experience here. So in the body of my report, I'm going to right-click and insert, in this case, a list visual. Now, we'll introduce the list in more detail in Module 5. But what the list is really is a rectangle that when we bind it to a data set, for each row or grouping level, it will repeat the rectangle. So what I love about this is it allows free-form placement like a template, and then for each row it's just going to repeat, repeat, repeat.
And I get asked about this type of report quite a bit, because this is a report that people just don't create in Power BI Desktop today. It wouldn't make sense to do so.
And you couldn't do it because it can't dynamically size according to the number of salespeople that we need to present.
Exactly.
So let's just get the location and size happening. So location left is 0, top is 0, so it's the very top of our body. From a size point of view, I want it to be as wide as the page, so I think we decided 7.5 was the width of the body, so our list will also be 7.5, and I'll make the height of the list about 1.6. So from the report data pane, to add the salesperson in, like I want to display the salesperson, then I just drag the field and drop it. What do you think it's done, Chris?
I don't know, Peter. Why don't you tell me?
Oh, okay. Well, let's answer the question by selecting it. And then what we see over here is it's created a text box named salesperson.
Well.
Now, remember we talked about shorthand notation.
Yes.
So what you see is in square brackets salesperson is the shorthand notation for, let's see, right click, open the expression for the text box. It is from the fields collection, the salesperson item, and its value property.
See, I thought you were trying to trick me. That's why I didn't answer the question.
I wouldn't do that, Chris. So by dragging a field direct to your report canvas, it adds a text box with an expression that equals the value of that field. So it's pretty straightforward to start laying out that report design. All right, so let's do some formatting of the text box itself. All right, so we'd want this to be prominent, so I'll come to my font settings, and I've got a font group here. Let's update the font size to 18. Now, you might say, why, Peter, don't you just use the ribbon to do this? Well, I could.
Again, it's all personal preference.
It is, and you work with what works for you, and you get into your own rhythms. From a location point of view, I'm going to make it left 1.2. I'm going to make it top 0. Here's the pixel precision being configured. A width of 6.3 and a height of 0.3. So we've got our salesperson across the top.
And I strongly recommend, like, I fall into this trap as well. I'll try and just do it with my mouse. And I strongly recommend actually typing in the items, because you will spend a lot of times fiddling with your mouse that can be better spent on other activities.
And what you might find is that you want 1.2, but Report Builder gives you 1.21.
Yes, because you'll try and tweak it and tweak it.
And you'll tweak it, and then it'll give you 1.19.
Yes.
And you can't quite get it. All right, but if you do want that control, I suggest you zoom right in.
Yes.
And then you might get that degree of control. But ultimately, two people with experience here are saying the best way to configure size and location is directly in the properties pane.
Yes.
Now would be a great time to actually run this. Like, is it producing something that is on the right track? Right. What do you think?
I think it's on the right track.
Awesome. I mean, it's a little sparse, but for good reason.
Yes.
We do notice at the very bottom of the report page, it's page 1 of 4. So we can see that this rectangle template is actually repeating many, many times. In fact, I think there are 18 employees with the company. So the rest is pretty straightforward. What we're going to do is bring in other details about the report user. So what do we have?
Well, you've got a number of fields you need to add there, right? In terms
well, what would come
title,
next? I guess
phone.
Let's put their title in there. Drag, drop, there's another text box. So let's see what happens if we do position this and get it just about right.
Well, something to keep in mind, I mean, at least when I was working with salespeople and creating reports for them, they want to know what region they're in, the sales region, perhaps.
Okay. Where does sales region come from?
Well, I think it is a group region.
Yeah, so I think what I would need to do that, because at AdventureWorks they have groups and regions. And I don't think we have enough space for all of it, so what could we do here? Why don't we create another calculated field? Okay, so I'll right-click the data set, and I can add a calculated field direct, so there's actually a shortcut to get to it. And so why don't I just add a calculated field that concatenates the two together? So we'll call this the, group region. And so in group region, we'll have an expression that says, on the data sets, give me the group, concatenate a colon space, and then give me the sales territory region. And so maybe it's best if that appears directly there, right? So now we've got who they are, where they come from, what their title is, what their phone number is. Email address, maybe.
I think so.
Well, if this is going to be like, do we have phone directories anymore?
They do. There's a lot of companies still have phone directories, absolutely.
All right, so let's switch to preview mode. How is it looking now? So we've got our calculated field of capitalized surname and lowercase first name. We've got the group and region together, and we've got these other details. So far it looks good. All right, well, the next part's interesting because remember that the employee photograph was actually retrieved from the database.
Oh, that's true.
So I can just right-click here and, insert an image. Remember, it's inside the rectangle, so it's going to repeat. Mm-hmm. And so this time, we use an embedded image for the company logo, but this time it's a database image coming from the field that is the employee photo. You need to know what the MIME type is, and I know that it's stored as JPEG.
Mm-hmm. It could be PNG if you want it.
Could be, but today it's not. All right, so for
just
the image,
saying it could be.
It could be. In fact, it could be. Let's take a look. The image property says it could be many different types.
That's right.
All right, so BMP and GIF supported as well. Animated GIF supported.
Yes, I believe so. Not that I'm saying that that's a good idea in a static printed report to have an animated GIF, but...
It's only a good idea if you want to annoy someone, to have an animated GIF distracting them as they're trying to read your report. And of course, I'm not sure what a PDF printout would do with an animated GIF. Probably not a good choice. All right, so for the image itself, we know we want it at the top left. And from a size point of view, how about we make this, 1 inch wide, 1.4 wide height. All right, let's see what it looks like now. Aha. Now, this is beginning to look like a salesperson directory.
It's an interesting collection of salespeople they have.
They look more like fluffy toys.
They do.
But I'm not going to pass judgment. Okay. Here's a time where we might consider using something like a line. I think there needs to be a separator in there to sort of separate one salesperson from another. So how about I just make this list a little bit bigger and we right-click, insert a line.
Yeah, this is one of the scenarios where that absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, so we do something like this and then make the height of that about this. How's it looking?
Wow, it looks really nice.
Oh, page 1 does anyway. So we're in print layout mode, aren't we?
Yeah, you can switch. You can obviously switch back.
So in print layout, let's have a look. Page 2, page 3. I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
Perhaps one consideration is sort, though. What have we got? It's not a good directory if we have to scan the whole thing looking for
Absolutely.
So what we'll do is we'll just come to our list and we'll see that there is the ability to control sort order.
And this is really important because, again, people often ask how they go and do small things like this with paginated reports.
So there we go. There's a property called sort expression. Look, could we not just put an order by in the select statement?
No, because you have to be careful in terms of how it's viewed on the canvas.
All right. So it's a better it's a better practice to apply the sorting in the report, not in the query itself. There's no guarantee that it will render in that order. So we'll click the ellipsis here and we will add a sort condition that is to sort by the salesperson.
And to which item are you applying this sort to?
We're applying it to, well, we haven't got to those details yet. It'll come in a later module. But okay, Chris has asked the question and my Zoom isn't working properly. But in row groups, you'll see we've just got details. What that means is that the rectangle is grouping on each row that is retrieved. We'll talk about grouping when we get to module 5. So the answer to Chris's question is, for each row, it's actually sorting at row level.
Okay.
All right, so now sorting by salesperson. Let's go ahead and preview the report. And now we see Syed Abbas at top, Amy Alberts, etc.
Awesome.
I'm pretty happy with that report. I think that's covered off on the topic of data sources, data sets, taken it to the next level of actually what we do with the data, but we wanted you to see an end-to-end. In fact, end-to-end isn't quite at the end yet. See, what I'm going to do is save. Now, remember, saving is saving a file locally, that RDL. But let's take it to the new level of saving as and see the true end-to-end by publishing to the service itself.
Ooh.
All right, so I'm going to publish to a workspace named Pread. The name will be Salesperson Directory. Now, before I just click OK there, remember that this is the workspace and we currently have a couple of reports.
Yep.
So all going well, when I click Save, that RDL is published to the workspace. We switch back, and how's that? Didn't even need to refresh.
Wow.
All right, so let's just go ahead and run it.
Ah.
And there we go.
Yes.
All right, so the report is published, which means, and we'll explore this in Module 7, we've now got these service capabilities: embedding, exporting, page navigation, comments, subscribing, and sharing. So there's our end-to-end demo. In fact, let's just use an opportunity here to produce a PDF of the Salesperson Directory. That's truly end-to-end. And now you've got something that we could pass around the office to help people find other employees.
Yeah, and I think that this is a really important point because, when you think of reporting and analytics, you think of, what's one of the interesting things about this report? There's no numbers on there. It's just a list of the employees, but these are the types of reports that organizations produce all the time. These are these basic operational reports that need this type of pagination and easily repeatable on different pages that they can hand out, archive, and it's a really, really valuable piece of your overall Power BI experience that now you can do in a very simple and straightforward way.
Excellent. And do you notice that there's a report title?
I did, and that's very exciting to see because
Excellent.
I wasn't sure if you were telling me the truth.
Well, there I am, and there's the proof. And so that ends our end-to-end demo, although the AdventureWorks people have got another requirement.
Oh.
There's such a large and growing number of salespeople that to show them all at once is overwhelming.
That's true.
They want to be able to filter this, and they want the user to determine how it's filtered. So stay tuned. We're going to return in Module 4, where we introduce parameterization with reports, and we're going to fine-tune this to meet AdventureWorks requirements.